Evening, everyone. How are you this evening if you're in my part of the world? Good afternoon if you're in an afternoon part, and good morning if you're in a morning part. Welcome to the Network Migration Services webinar on Australia this evening. Just to get a couple of the procedures out of the way, we're going to knock this over quite quickly tonight, somewhere between probably 20, 25, 30 minutes. If you do have any questions, please put them into the chat room. Welcome to Liz. Liz Verleuen is our HR manager, also one of our becoming a licensed advisor, and is heavily involved in, of course, the potential placement of candidates and clients. So Liz is actually down in Durban at the moment with her family for school holidays, but thank you for logging on tonight, Liz. Lovely to have you on board. Just as I said, it's going to be really quick tonight because I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you want the detail, as I've just said in one of my notes here in the chat room, all the information I'm going to give you is free anyway. So tonight I'm going to just touch on basic immigration points, basic rules and regulations, mostly around skilled migrants, and some changes that have happened for Australia in the last, in fact, in the last 3 or 4 days. Not some major changes, but some positive changes towards assessing authorities and DAMA agreements, etc., which I'll explain in a second. We've got just under 100 people listening to me tonight, so welcome to all of you. My name is Andrew Kerr, if you haven't guessed that already, and I am a licensed immigration advisor for Australia and, by the way, also New Zealand. So if you don't qualify for Australia, you might qualify for New Zealand, which I can also assess you for as well. I'm MARA registered. You can see that on the first slide there, my Migration Agents Registration Association number. I've been registered for, 13, 14 years now. It's not mandatory for Australia to be registered if you're offshore. It should be, but it's not. But if you're going to use an agent, please make sure they're registered, or at least that initial contact with the agent is, that agent is registered. Especially, there are a couple of companies in my part of the world that allow non-licensed agents to give immigration advice. And frankly, with all due respect to my next comment, a non-licensed agent often doesn't have a clue what they're talking about and generally just wants to get your business in because mostly an agent that generally works for a company, especially if they're non-licensed, are probably paid a commission structure. And frankly, all they want is their money. And you've got to be really careful here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a major, major decision that you are considering. It's also a bloody expensive one. Excuse my language, but it is. Because you're coming from if you're coming from our part of the world, you're coming from a rand-based economy going to a dollar-based economy. So, it costs money to immigrate. So you've got to be aware of that. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that you do understand that if you're going to engage the services or just get advice from somebody, make sure that person you're speaking to initially is a licensed agent. Okay. It protects you as the consumer. It's as simple as that. Because if you're using a non-licensed agent and something goes wrong, you have no recourse at all. Whereas if you're using a licensed agent and clearly there's a mistake made, and thankfully in the last 30 years I've been in this business, there's not many mistakes being made, but mistakes happen. It's life. But if you're using a non-licensed agent, you've got no recourse at all. All right. So make sure you're going to use a licensed agent, or that the agent works for the agent is licensed that works for the firm anyway. Consultations and immigration advice from us to you is completely free. All right. So if you want to be assessed, all I need, for any type of migration, be it skilled, be it parent, be it spouse, be it work visas, be it student visa, whatever, I'll go through that in a minute, then I will assess you and I will quote you on procedures, processes, costs, and timeframes. And I will send you that in a very simple email. I had a look at one of my competitors' processes the other day, and everybody has their own business model. I'm not putting them down, but their introduction email is 21 pages long. Who's going to read 21 pages of information? You want to know, one, do you qualify? And two, if you qualify, how do you qualify? And secondly, what does it cost? It's as simple as that. So we send you what we call a pathway to residency document, which is normally just a 1.5, 2-page document, which gets straight to the point. It outlines the process you want, the specific type of visa you want, how to obtain those visas, and what the costs are from the Department of Home Affairs in Australia's perspective. And of course, we send a separate quote for our services to assist you with that process. All right, so we get straight to the point very, very quickly. I just want to also thank our service providers. I'll explain why in a minute, but we are quite literally the one-stop shop. And I want to just point out that I'm also a member of MIA, the Migration Institute of Australia. And one of the major reasons I maintain my membership of MIA, because DHA does not consult with agents at all. Even though you're a licensed agent, you cannot get information from the Department of Home Affairs in Australia. Personally, I think that's wrong, but that's my personal opinion. So MIA is our go-to company, if you like, or organisation between agents and DHA, because they represent agents with the Department of Home Affairs. So, as I said, if you want to be assessed, it's free on any type of visa, and I'll send you the processes, procedures, and cost. But for that, especially, of course, if it's a skilled migrant visa, then I need your CVs, please. I don't care what they look like. They're not going anywhere. They're just coming to me. I need your CVs of yourself and your spouse if you're in a relationship, clearly not your children. But I do need to know the structures of your family, i.e., are you a family of 2, 3, 6, or 7? And the ages of everybody in the family. Now, most modern CVs, of course, don't have your ages on them, which is fair enough. And I don't need you to change your CV for me. We rewrite them anyway if you're our client. But I do need you to let me know the structures of your family and the ages of each individual in the family, please. So send me the CVs. Just attach them to the mail. You can log on to our website or you can email them to me. I put my email address in up the top there in the chat room, andrew@networkmigration.com. By the way, all our emails are our first names. Liz@networkmigration.com, Andrew@networkmigration.com. So it's pretty simple to remember. Just remember @networkmigration.com. Email me the CV with a one-line paragraph or a paragraph. Sorry, one line isn't a paragraph. I did do English at school. But, just say, hi, Andrew, I'm John. My wife is Liz, and I'm 42. Liz is 36, and we have 2 young children, and the ages of the children, please, because I need to know what type of visas we're doing for the children as well. So please send me those. Just a very quick thank you to our service providers. And while I'm doing that, I just want to go to the next slide. I've only got 3 or 4 slides to show you tonight because I'm going to be doing a little bit of talking, if I can get to the next slide. There we are. Right, about Network. Network's been around, over 30 years. I joined the company. I came to South Africa. By the way, I'm a New Zealander. I lived in New Zealand for 20 odd years. I moved to Australia for 10 years. I loved Australia as well. And then I had a contract with an international publishing house in South Africa for 2 years in 1990. Mr. Mandela was being released in those stages, and this particular company wanted to open their footprint again in South Africa. So I came over to South Africa on a 2-year contract. And when my contract expired, I joined, there was a job offer with Network Migration Services. So I joined the company in 1993. And in 96, I bought the Network Migration. Very pleased to say that over the last 30 odd years, we've immigrated well over 17,000 families between Australia and New Zealand. And we are quite literally the one-stop shop. And I mean that. I had a client actually today, funnily enough, they'd done their research. I did a consult with them at 5 o'clock, and she was a lovely woman and lovely couple. And she had done her homework. She'd done her homework on who to use, what they cost, what they charge, what they do, etc., etc. And I know we're the only agency out there, for example, that has a full-on job search division and job search training and job search providing and helping you find jobs. I know we're the only company out there that does that. So we've got 3 separate divisions. One is the visa division. Clearly, myself and my file managers, we put together your applications, we prepare everything, which I'll run through in a minute, the sorts of things we prepare, and we submit to the relevant authorities. The second division is run by Rose Nightingale. Rose is our relocation division, where it comes to meeting at airports, opening accommodation, furniture removals, pets, shifting money, meeting at airports, hiring cars, doing everything that's physically related to the migration process. So Rose runs that. And those quotes, by the way, for those services are free. We don't charge for those services because we put you in touch with our service providers. And then the last division is run by Liz, Liz Full-Ewan. Liz is our HR manager. She's got an honours degree in HR. And she literally runs not only the HR division, she's also becoming a licensed advisor, and she runs our recruitment company. We have our own recruitment company. It's based in New Zealand, and the reason we base it in New Zealand is because everybody going to New Zealand the main applicants anyway need a job offer. But clearly, because New Zealand and Australia are so close, we also can help our clients with that all-important job offer in Australia. The difference with Australia is 90% of you will be getting jobs once you've got your visas, whereas New Zealand, you get the job first, then you apply for the visa. Okay, so it's a major difference. I'm not going to talk about New Zealand tonight. I do separate webinars on New Zealand. I did one last Wednesday, another one in a couple of weeks' time. But if you want information on New Zealand, frankly, just when you send a CV, say, can I have information on both countries? Simple as that. And then if the information, as I said, is sent to you, it's free. And where you are in the world is irrelevant. We've got clients in China. We've got clients in the Ukraine, obviously, at the moment, Egypt. Gosh, where else? Philippines, Canada, Ireland. We've got clients all over Europe. So with the technology today, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we can assist you, okay? We've got about 21 team members that work with network migration in the 3 divisions. And we also have an office in Auckland, which is manned by our operations manager, Desiree Lindeque. Desiree is also a provisionally licensed advisor and runs our operations from New Zealand as well. So I'm going to go through the Australia visa and points soon. Our relocation and partners, you can contact Rose for that. And clearly, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat room in the next 15 minutes, and Liz or I will answer them. I just wanted to say thank you to Ruan as well. Ruan's our marketing manager, and Ruan is doing a phenomenal job at the moment with all of the things that is going on in the company at the moment between the 2 countries. And thanks, Ruan, as always, for setting up this evening. Right, let's get to the next slide. A little bit about my network. I've told you that we've been around 33 years. We've done thousands of families. And by the way, our success rate is 99%, as close to 100% as you possibly can. We do not fail on applications. Well, we don't. I mean, of the 16, 17,000 families we've done, I can, 10, maybe 15 times in the last 30 years. And a lot of those reasons have been, you may have a health issue you're not aware of, for example, those types of stuff. So, if you start this process, you should feel virtually 100% this is going to be successful. Thanks, Ron. Right. That's me a couple of years ago, looking a little younger, a little bit older than now. I'm actually sitting in our office in Johannesburg. I normally do it from home. My internet's home's a bit wonky at the moment, which Rowan is actually fixing. But yeah, I'm sitting in our office. Our offices are just past Monte Casino, just in the Four Ways area, just off the old William Nicol Drive, which is now called William Mandela Drive. So I'm sitting in our offices as we speak. Australia, I love Australia. I loved it. I lived there 10 years. I loved it. It's huge. It's a massive country in landmass wise. It's one of the biggest in the world. I think it's 3rd biggest. Anyway, and there are 8 states and territories in Australia, and they are so different. It's exciting. I mean, West Australia is very different than New South Wales, for example. Queensland is very different than South Australia, and South Australia is very different than Northern Territory. And ACT, is a place, a small little place, the capital, of course, Canberra, is a place on its own. So Australia is beautiful. And I really enjoyed living there in my time. I spent most of my time in Sydney, but I also lived in Melbourne for a short period of time, Perth and Brisbane. I loved it. Okay. Australia visa and point system. We're going to go through that just now. And I'm going to sort of concentrate on just explaining the points to you a little bit. Now, there's not a visa category that we cannot do. I'm going to concentrate on skilled migrant tonight in the next 10 minutes, but clearly student visas, no problem at all. Family visas, if you've got direct family in Australia. And what I mean by direct family, it needs to be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, your uncle, your aunt, your niece or your nephew, or your first cousin. I wouldn't necessarily use my family to get into Australia. It's called a subclass 491 visa, and they can't sponsor you if they live in Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne anyway. They need to live somewhere else. And it's a low priority visa. They don't issue a lot every year. And the processing time on a 491 family sponsorship, gosh, is upwards of 6, 7, 8 years. So I probably wouldn't be recommending using a family to sponsor you. I'd rather be using a state to sponsor you, which I'll talk about in a minute. Business visas into Australia, we're doing a couple of them at the moment. I won't talk about them tonight. Clearly, you need to be an entrepreneur, you need to be a business owner, you need to have owned a business for a couple of years generally, and you need to show a specific turnover based on the Australian dollar. And that is, of course, calculated in your particular currency. and let's say it was turnover from 2021 that you were claiming, it's whatever the exchange rate was in 2021. So the Rand, especially in those of us living in Africa at the moment, the Rand has gone for a ball of chalk. It's really not worth a lot with most currencies in the world, or most first world currencies anyway. So business visas, you can either do an entrepreneur visa, where of course you're going over there to either purchase or start your own business or start something new, or maybe open a branch over there, or you can look at doing an investor visa. But those are quite complicated, so I will talk about those with you in a private consultation, which, remember, are free. And I consult either face-to-face in the offices here from Monday to Saturdays, or I do Zoom, Skype, Teams, or Google Meet. It doesn't matter. Where you are in the world, I can consult with you, taking into cognizance of course timeframes. Work visas, we're going to be doing a lot more of those in the future, and I'll tell you why. Australia seems to be leaning towards allowing the states to sponsor applications more so than they were in the past. Let me explain that. The three visas I'm going to be talking about tonight mainly are what we call subclass 189 visas. That's what I call the blue chip visa. Live where you want, do what you want. For that visa, 99% of the time, you will need a qualification. And I mean a degree, a trade, a minimum 3-year diploma, etc. You will need a qualification in 99% of cases. If you're a very, very senior manager with a corporate company, you might get away with not having a qualification. And also, if you're a computer professional, you might get away with not having a diploma or degree. I do underline the word might. Okay, because when you do a visa to Australia on a skilled capacity, then you need to have a qualification most of the time, because there are over 30 assessing authorities in Australia, and they all have their own processes, and they'll assess your qualifications, etc. I'll clearly outline this in the process I send you. But I've noticed, especially today, it was announced that a lot of states are being allocated, are using the DAMA agreement. The DAMA agreement is a designated area migration. DAMA, designated area migration. I forgot what the last A stands for at the moment. But anyway, designated area migration. So, for example, there are 8 states and territories in Australia. South Australia, Northern Territory, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, ACT, West Australia. Can't remember how many I counted there. But each state and territory has their own immigration office. So they do state nominations based on the skills that they require in each specific state. And they're very different. So what happens is, on the 1st of July each year, that is the start of the Australian tax year, 1st of July to June 30th. July is 3 months away. May, June, July is 3.5 months away. And that's when that's when Australian federal government reboots their entire annual process. And for example, just using some numbers, they might say, right, we're going to let in 155,000 immigrants this year. We're going to let in 25,000 of those on business visas. And by the way, when I say let in, if you're a family of 5, you take 5 spaces. Even though one of you is the main applicant, you still take 5 spaces. We're going to let in 5,000 students this year. That'll actually be higher, because student visas, gosh, the student industry in Australia is an $8 billion industry. It's huge. Because, of course, you go into Australia on a student visa, you're paying international student rates. But if you're going to do a student visa, for God's sake, make sure that you have a pathway to residency from it. Because most student visas now, once you've studied, you leave. You've got to leave. So make sure you've got a residency pathway from potentially what you're studying. I'll be able to tell you what that is. Skilled migrant is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. But work visas. Now, with a DAMA agreement, designated area, 99 times out of 100, you need a job offer, which is where Liz and her team comes into it, because, of course, part of the DAMA process is actually having an offer of employment. And it's quite fast because of the DAMA process, during the process getting the offer, clearly Department of Home Affairs understands that you need to start work soon. So it's quite a fast process. So we didn't really touch DAMA applications up until this year, but because it's just seeming, well, now that our recruitment company's launched, we launched it before COVID, but then of course COVID hit, and so we put it on the shelf. But now that that's up and running, we are able to help our candidates a lot more when it comes to finding that all-important job in Australia, if it's part of the DAMA agreement. Also, clearly, if you're doing a skilled migrant application, as I mentioned earlier, you get your visas up front. And then, of course, once you've got your visas, we hand you over to the job search team if you want that type of assistance. Okay. Now, remember I said I'm only going to talk about skilled migrant tonight. This is the lodgement mark for a skilled migrant application. All righty. 65 points you required. Now, you are scored by way of your age. And you'll notice here that your cut-off age for Australia on a 189, 190 or 491 is 45. Roxanne, it's a very good question. No, there's not an age restriction for a work visa. And in fact, on a DAMA agreement, you can actually get in and still get residency up to the age of 54 years old. The moment you turn 55, you can't. But on a skilled migrant application, you need to be under 45 years old if you're lodging an application on a 189, 190 or 491. Now, 189 is a visa which is blue chip. Once it's granted, live where you want, do what you want. A 190 is sponsored by a state. Okay? Now, in other words, you're applying, let's say you're a fitter and turner, and you're applying into South Australia, and a fitter is on the South Australian skills list. Okay, because you're on the list, you apply to South Australia to be nominated. Once the nomination comes through, it's not that expensive. It's about $300, $350. Once that comes, Australian dollars. Once that comes through, we can then lodge the application. And because you're nominated by a state, you get 5 bonus points. Let me just go. I hope you're taking screenshots of this. So you get 5 bonus points on a 491. There you are, down the bottom left there. And you sign a declaration that says you're happy to live and work in the sponsoring state for a period of 2 years. All righty. Still residency. You still get free schooling. You still get free healthcare. Okay. A 491 visa is a new visa that came out in November 2019. It was launched just before COVID. And you get 15 bonus points for a 491. And you're sponsored by a state or territory again, but it's designed for regional Australia. So you get the visa. It's granted to you for 5 years. For 3 consecutive years, in those 5 years, the main applicant has to earn just over $70,000 a year. That's easy. But you cannot, for those 3 consecutive years, live or work in Sydney City, Melbourne City, or Brisbane City. You can live anywhere else in the country except those 3 cities. It's done by a postcode. But you get 15 bonus points for that visa. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, sponsored by an Australian eligible Australian citizen or resident is 15 points as well. But I wouldn't use this one. If you're a single applicant, you're going to get 10 points. Single means you're not in a relationship. You might have children, but you're not in a relationship. Okay, so that means you can get 10 bonus points. And then, of course, if you studied in Australia, you can actually get another 10 points as well, which would be quite rare. So coming back to this first slide, there are your points for your age. There are your points for your qualifications if you have a qualification. And if you have a qualification, your no, Minu, it's not the same as a 491. It's a different application. So just contact me, Minu, and I will explain it to you. But it's a different application. 491, family or state sponsored, is not DAMA. So it is different. So let me know, just contact me and I'll bring you up to speed. So points for qualifications, clearly you've got to have the qualification if you're claiming points for it, and that qualification must be assessed by one of the relevant assessing authorities in Australia. And they'll charge you anywhere between $5,000 to $4,000. So, $500 to $4,000. 4,000 is quite extreme. That's more for tradesmen. Thank you, Liz. Thanks. Thank you, guys. So if you engage us, within the first 3 to 5 days, you're allocated a file manager, which is a person, your go-to person all the time, as well as me. And that file manager will send you what we call a starter pack. Now, if you're a nurse or you'll get a starter pack based on nursing. If you're a fitter, you'll get one based on fitter. If you're an accountant, you'll get one based on accountant. If you're a teacher, you'll get one based on a teacher. So the starter packs are personalized to you and your family, okay? Step one in the starter pack is we need to get your qualifications assessed. And if you've got a doctorate, you're going to get 20, bachelor's 15, and diploma or trade 10. Now, your assessment is based on what we commonly call an ANSCO code. ANSCO stands for the Australia, New Zealand Standard Classification of your occupation. There it is. Okay. It is huge. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of ANSCOs. But of course, most of them won't be relevant. Because clearly, with no disrespect, if you're a waiter, there's no way you're going to get into Australia because you don't have a qualification. And not only do you not have a qualification, but you're not working in a field which they deem in demand. Okay? So the first part of the starter pack is going to be your skills assessment. What do we need from you in order to get a positive skills assessment? So you would upload those documents into our back-end CRM system, which is called Easy Migrate. And as you upload the documents, it automatically tells your file manager that you're uploading documents. And we will work on the application. Once it's ready, we send it to you for a final get-go, just checking dates and this and that and whatever. And then we send it. When we send it, you pay the assessing body's fees, which is somewhere between, as I said, $500, on average $500 to probably $1,500, somewhere in that bracket. Tradesmen are more expensive, but you're looking somewhere between $500 to $1,500 dollars for a skills assessment. Most of the assessments take 6 weeks to 12 weeks, but some take longer. Some can take up to 6 months. Some can take even longer, especially if you're a tradesman at the moment, because some of those trades aren't being assessed. 4 years in the industry if you only have a certificate. No, Madeleine, unfortunately that won't fly. If you've got a civil drafting certificate, you could get in on a work visa, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but you won't get a positive skills assessment based on your work experience, Madeleine, unless you're an IT or you're a senior corporate manager. And I mean senior, the CEO, basically. Or if you're not the CEO, you're reporting to the CEO. So no, Madeleine, it doesn't sound like you'll make Australia, unless it's, of course, on a 482, which I'll talk about in a minute. There are your points for skilled work. Now, clearly your skilled work experience must be related to the qualification you're claiming. All right? So you can't be an accountant and then for the last 6 years been a graphic designer. All right? You can claim the qualification, but you can't claim the work experience because it's completely different. So you get points for 3 out of 5 years, 5 out of 10, 8 years, and of course 8 out of 10 years as well. Points for English: competent, proficient, or superior. It's a bit of a nightmare, this. It's the biggest money-making exercise I've ever seen. Anyway, you're welcome, Madeleine. You might be sitting in England at the moment, or Canada, or America, or Ireland, or whatever. You say, hey, yippee-yay, I'm exempt from the English test. And you're quite right, you are. But being exempt means you can't claim the points. And you might still need the points here. So you might still have to sit the English test even if you are exempt. There are normally 4 tests you can do. Be careful here because some of the assessing authorities only accept 1 or 2 tests. This is an IELTS score I've given you here. Or you can do PTE mostly, or IELTS, or some, I've forgotten the other 2. Thanks, Liz. So what Liz is telling you, Madeleine, send us the documents because it just might be relevant. Anyway, so you get points for English. Some cases you need to sit the English test before you actually apply to the assessing authority, like accountants, engineers, teachers. They need to have their English results as part of the skills assessment. So clearly, if you need an English test up front, we'll tell you up front. And then if your spouse sits English and gets competent, you can claim 5 points. And if your spouse has qualifications that is on the same skills list as you, you can also get those qualifications assessed and claim 5 extra points. There's 2 skills lists, main skills lists. One is called the medium and long-term strategic skills shortage list. And the other one is called the state and territory skilled occupations list. You might be on, well, if you're on the medium and long-term list, you're going to be doing a 189 as long as you qualify. And if you're not, then you're going to be needing a state or territory to sponsor you. Okay. Now, the minimum lodgement mark is 65 points, but that is not the automatic selection mark. Okay. Australia selects from the 189 skills list every 12 weeks. It's been a bit ballsed up during COVID for obvious reasons. And the last selection was actually January, and they only selected education workers and healthcare workers. That's all they selected. But I do believe that by July, it'll get back to some semblance of normality. It'll be normal, and they'll start selecting general skills and general occupations again. So if you want to, and remember, they reboot in July. So if you want to be in those first selections, July, September, etc., then get on with getting your skills assessments done, because you want to be one of the first people that loads an application. Because when you've done your English test, you've done your skills assessment, you've got all your documents in order, we then load the application into the Expressions of Interest website. It's called Skills Select, and we wait to be selected. You can stay in that pool for 2 years if you're not selected. If after 2 years you're not selected, you can go back in. Because when you load yourself into the pool, it doesn't cost anything. Clearly, it's cost you for English and it's cost you for the skills assessment, but when you're loading, it doesn't cost anything. And you can load multiple applications. What we do is we load a 189 and a 190 and sometimes a 491 all at the same time, which is giving you all of those options to be selected. So clearly, I'll explain that when I consult with you and or when I email you the processes. Okay. So, for example, if you're a tradesman, you're probably going to be selected on 65 points. Okay. But if you're an accountant hasn't been selected on anything less than 80 since 2016. It is what it is. If you're an IT professional, it's normally somewhere between 80 to 90 that you need to get to be selected. So just because you're sitting on 65 doesn't mean you're going to be selected. And I had a consultation with a client the other day where they took advice from another agent. In fact, they hired this other agent. I know who this other agent is. And I'm not going to comment on who it is, but what I'm going to comment on is on how unethical they are. And let me tell you why. This person was an accountant. They'd been assessed and they're sitting on 70 points. It's the maximum they can get. And not once did this agency tell that person that accountants have not been selected on anything less than 80 for the last 9 years. Not once. So this person has paid this agent and the agent hasn't been forthcoming. BS, guys. You know what BS stands for? When you get the information, get your facts. Understand the process. Don't be led into believing that just because you're sitting on 65 points, you're going to automatically be selected, because you're not. Sometimes you will, but in most cases, you're actually not. So be careful. Just please make sure whoever you're going to use, you've laid down the facts. You understand it completely. I was disgusted at the way this company, who I know well, had consulted with this particular family, because this is your life, ladies and gentlemen. You're not buying a piece of furniture here. This is your life we're talking about here. So make sure you get the facts up front. And you can clearly tell that I'm a straight shooter, and I will give you the facts up front. I would rather not have you as a client, clearly, than take your money on misrepresentation. It's as simple as that, because this agent knew that they know what's going on, and to not tell the client until the client's paid you, and then, oh, by the way, bang, 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 that's BS. I mean, it's rubbish. All right. So just make sure, of course, you get advice from a licensed agent. Okay. Now, let's just have a quick talk about 482s. By the way, as I said earlier, our relocation process is free. Putting you in touch with all our service providers is free. I'm about 3 minutes away from finishing, guys. We never really concentrated on helping people find jobs in Australia, because even under the old 482 requirement, which is, by the way, a 482 is a work visa. It's generally issued to you for 2 to 4 years. But unlike New Zealand, when you're on a work visa, you still get free schooling and healthcare. In Australia, you don't. So if you're on a work visa, for that period of time you're on the work visa, you don't get free healthcare and you don't get free schooling. So be aware of that. But it is a pathway to residency for you, because Under the old processes on a 482, you got granted the 2 to 4 year visa. And then in the third year, you needed to meet the requirements of that particular skill set, i.e. have the qualification. Well, they took it away. They wiped it a couple of months ago. So if you get into Australia on a 482 visa, after 2 years and you're still working for the company and the company's prepared to keep you on, you can get in on a direct stream entry visa. You don't even need the qualification as long as the company's going to still keep you unemployed. So, yes, and a 491 does. So the only one that doesn't have free healthcare is a temporary entry work visa, which of course is what a 482 is. So Minna, yes, on a 491, you still get healthcare and childcare as well. So ladies and gentlemen, it's already, I've talked for 35 minutes. I think the next step is contact me. I mean, send me an email, andrew@networkmigration.com, call the office, go onto our website, fill in a form, or just send me your CVs or your questions directly. And between myself and my senior colleagues, Liz and the team, we will be able to answer you within the same day. I'm one of these people that doesn't like shutting my laptop down until I've responded to my potential clients. Clearly, I have an awesome team here of plus minus 20 odd colleagues that take our clients and take them further on, etc. I'm predominantly involved, of course, in working with the clients, the file managers to collect all the documents and sign all those off, but also to, of course, speak to potential new candidates and new clients. So if you want to contact me, you're welcome, Minno. If you want to contact me, please email me, contact the office, let us know your basic details. And if you want information on both countries, just let me know. If you don't qualify for Australia, I'm going to tell you straight up, and I might offer you the opportunity to be assessed for New Zealand, which is also free. So thanks, Rowan. Thanks, Liz. Again, have a lovely evening, you guys. Everybody that's listening to me in the world, please stay safe wherever you are. And thank you for listening to me tonight. And if you do engage Network Migration to work within the future, we would be honored to assist you. And if you don't, even though we have advised you, we would still wish you all the very, very best. So stay safe, everybody. Ciao.